Have you ever stopped to think maybe there's more to us, like hidden potential locked away inside? Capabilities, beyond our usual five senses. We hear about things like telekinesis or telepathy, even those out of body things like astral projection. Sounds like sci fi, right? But what if it's not? So, our mission today on the deep dive is to really get into some fascinating source material we've gathered. We've got notes and audio excerpt, all pointing towards this tiny, tiny organ deep in your brain. Could it be the key to unlocking some really incredible human abilities? And maybe more importantly, is our modern world kind of messing it up?
Exactly. We're going to piece together what these sources say about this vital organ. Help you understand its basic biology, sure,
Hmm?
but also its deep symbolic meaning across different cultures throughout history and what that might actually mean for your health, your perception right now. It's definitely a deep dive where old wisdom seemed to bump up against modern life.
Okay, let's jump in then. The star of the show today is the pineal gland. First off, where exactly is this thing?
Our sources are quite specific. Right at the brain center, midline between the two hemispheres, tucked just behind the third cerebral ventricle. So really, really deep inside.
And the name itself, pineal, gives you a clue about its shape. It's called that because, well, it looks remarkably like a tiny pine cone. Small gland, yeah, but that pine cone shape, it turns out to be really significant according to these sources.
Right, and this is where the material we've looked at gets, frankly, quite compelling. This isn't just some random anatomical detail. The pine cone symbol and, by extension, the gland itself shows up again and again. Ancient civilizations, different spiritual paths. We're talking Egyptians, Babylonians, Islamic traditions, Buddhist, Hindu. It's kind of everywhere. Yeah, that consistency is what's really striking. It's hard to ignore. The sources strongly suggest this isn't coincidence. It points towards maybe a shared ancient understanding, some fundamental knowledge about us, about our bodies, that maybe spanned across different cultures. It really implies this little gland was seen as incredibly important back then, maybe more than we generally think now.
And it doesn't just stop in antiquity, does it? The notes we reviewed point out something amazing. Even at the Vatican, apparently, there's this huge bronze pine cone sculpture with lions and, get this, Egyptian hieroglyphs at the base. And the Pope's staff sometimes looks a lot like the staff of Osiris, the Egyptian god, which often had a pine cone on top.
Right.
Then you see similar symbolism in Mesoamerica, Jamaica, across Europe. It really makes you ask why? Why this one shape?
Exactly. What did all these different people across time and space understand about this tiny gland? Which leads us to one of the, let's say, more provocative ideas in our sources, that the pineal gland isn't just symbolically a third eye, but that it actually is one, technically speaking.
Okay, whoa, technically an eye. That's a big claim. How do the sources explain that?
Well, they describe it as being hollow, filled with water, and containing these tiny chrysums. And the membrane inside, the sources say, has structures, they call them P, that look like the rods and cones in our retinas. And supposedly, these are hardwired directly to the visual cortex, just like our regular eyes.
Huh. And like our eyes, the sources say it reacts to light and dark. It makes you think, doesn't it? How do you see when you're dreaming? Your eyes are closed, but the images are there. What's going on?
Exactly. And that thought connects directly to its biological role, which the sources emphasize quite a bit. Its function, especially hormone secretion, is apparently deeply tied to the sun cycle, to our circadian rhythm, our sleep-wake cycle. So during the day, the pineal gland, along with the gut actually, is said to produce serotonin, which is why some traditions mentioned in the material say eating during daylight is important. The sun helps digestion.
Ah, okay. And serotonin is the mood chemical, right?
That's the one, a key mood regulator. So the sources suggest this might be why, just getting outside, walking in the sun, or even practices like sun gazing, why they can help with mood, maybe even lift depression.
Interesting. So light exposure is key, but what about when it gets dark?
Okay, so when darkness falls, the pineal gland switches gears. It starts producing melatonin. And this is where it gets really crucial, according to our sources. Our bodies are constantly turning over cells, like massively. Over 500 million cells lost every day. And every night, they get replaced. That's cell mitosis.
Wow, 500 million a day.
Yeah. And that replacement, that repair, it needs energy. But gathering energy creates byproducts, these things called free radicals, leftover electron particles, basically. And they can damage healthy cells, contribute to aging, disease.
Right, I've heard of free radicals. Antioxidants fight them.
Exactly. And melatonin, our sources claim, is a super antioxidant, nature's own. Way more potent, they say, than vitamin C or E. It sweeps up those free radicals, protects cells, supports the immune system, heart health, guards against cancer, aging, and fundamentally it helps you sleep deeply, which is when your body does its major healing and repair work.
Okay, so beauty sleep is actually like fundamental repair sleep. That makes sense. But the sources go even further, don't they? Beyond biology, they talk about light.
Yeah, this is where it ventures into, well, more extraordinary territory. The claim is the pineal gland itself actually emits light, photons, even colors. And within that fluid inside the gland, our sources mention DMT crystals.
DMT, dimethyltryptamine, that's the compound often linked to intense spiritual or visionary experiences, right?
Precisely. And in this context, it's often seen as the link, the bridge, to what the sources call the astral world.
Okay, so how does that connection supposedly?
Well, the idea presented is that when the pineal gland gets activated, maybe during sleep, maybe meditation, it somehow blocks external electromagnetic fields. This creates an opening, allowing signals from this astral dimension to come in. These signals make those DMT crystals inside vibrate, and that vibration releases light energy directly into your visual cortex.
Letting you see with your mind's eye. Is that the idea?
That's the mechanism described, yes. Seeing without your physical eyes.
So this could be the explanation, according to these sources, for things like astral projection or remote viewing, which people often achieve through deep focus, like hypnosis or self-hypnosis.
Right. The theory is that whatever you perceive in those states out of body, viewing remotely, it gets sent back to the pineal gland as frequencies. Those frequencies trigger the crystals, creating the internal imagery.
Okay, wow. It really starts to connect the dots, maybe, on how some people might develop ESP or become psychic. This whole opening the third eye concept suddenly sounds a bit more mechanistic, if that makes sense.
It does provide a framework.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at the bigger picture here, the sources also include a pretty serious warning. Venturing into this astral world, while it might sound exciting, they say, proceed with caution, extreme caution.
Oh, why is that?
Because they suggest this realm isn't empty, there are entities there, and nobody's really sure what they are or what their intentions might be. The sources stress that once you open something like this, it can be very, very hard to close it again. And the potential overlap are in our world, and that world that's presented as highly undesirable. Think like that movie, The Sixth Sense, seeing things others can't, not necessarily pleasant.
Yeah, okay, that's a pretty sobering thought. Definitely not something to dabble in lightly. But it begs the question then, why do some people seem to naturally have these experiences or psychic abilities while most don't?
The sources link this to the body's energy system, specifically the chakras. Described as energy centers along the spine, the 33 vertebrae are mentioned specifically. Apparently, this chi or ki energy flows up the spine and can be manipulated or focused, eventually reaching the pineal gland. It suggests this whole subtle energy system interacts directly with the gland's potential.
Okay, so potential is one thing, but the sources then shift to a major problem, right? Something happening now. They talk about our environment being processed, polluted.
Yes, that's a huge point in the material. We're surrounded by pollution, processed food, polluted air. But they focus heavily on fluoride, which they identify as a byproduct of phosphate fertilizer production, ending up in municipal water supplies.
Right, fluoride in tap water. That's a common concern.
But they go further. Even if you filter drinking water, what about showers, baths? The claim is your skin absorbs more fluoride in a hot shower than you drink. That's what's stated. And this fluoride apparently gets in, taxes your adrenal glands, leading to that kind of relaxed, maybe even drained feeling after a shower, instead of feeling refreshed and vibrant. And it's not just fluoride. They mention toxins generally, people loading up without ever cleansing. They even allude to things like chemicals sprayed in the sky, suggesting multiple angles of environmental assault.
And the result of all this exposure, all these toxins, what do they do to the pineal gland itself?
This is the crux of the problem highlighted: calcification. These substances, especially fluoride, are said to accumulate in the pineal gland, causing it to harden, to calcify.
Turning it to, what did the source say? A bony, useless nub. That sounds bad.
It sounds terrible. And the sources claim this has actually happened to many people already.
Okay, so if the gland calcifies, what are the consequences?
Well, think back to those vital hormones it produces. Serotonin for mood, melatonin for sleep, repair, antioxidant defense.
Yeah.
If the gland calcifies, its ability to produce these plummets dramatically. And according to these sources, that leads directly to a whole host of diseases. It's essentially lights out for that higher potential and even basic health regulation if it's not addressed. It makes this tiny gland seem incredibly important for just functioning well.
Wow. Okay, that's quite the warning. But is it all doom and gloom? Is there anything people can do? The sources must offer solutions, right?
Thankfully, yes. They don't just present the problem, they offer actionable steps for decalcification to, as they put it, potentially open up your third eye again.
Okay, good. What are the recommendations?
First and foremost, avoid tap water completely for drinking and showering. Because of the fluoride, chemicals, heavy metals, reverse osmosis water is the top recommendation for both.
Reverse osmosis for showering, too. That's a commitment.
It is, but that's the advice given. Diet-wise, they suggest some meat is good for essential amino acids, though they do note that vegetarians or vegans can use hemp protein to get those aminos, avoiding that pale, pasty look they mentioned sometimes happens.
Okay, what else for diet?
A big one. Avoid GMO foods. The sources claim GMOs actively destroy the pineal gland and even DNA. So focus on organic, non-GMO, non-hybrid fruits and vegetables. Lots of them. And interestingly, they emphasize purplish ones, grapes, eggplant, berries, say the color frequency is beneficial.
Purple foods. Got it. Any specific foods highlighted?
Yes, foods high in boron are recommended. Things like avocados, almonds, raisins, prunes, dates, hazelnuts, and a list of specific decalcifiers. Raw cocoa-like, real cacao, oregano oil, raw apple cider vinegar, garlic, spirulina, calero, cilantro, wheatgrass.
Huh. A lot of that is the kind of intense health stuff people sometimes shy away from. Cilantro, wheatgrass.
Exactly. But maybe that's the point. They also list beneficial herbs. Licorice, ginseng, lavender, chamomile, violet. There's that purple connection again, and wild indigo bark.
So diet is huge. Anything else besides food and water?
Yes. Regular body cleansing is heavily emphasized. Doing detoxes periodically.
Right. And what about just lifestyle? Daily habits?
Simple things, actually. Take breaks from screens, computers, TVs, phones. Constant electromagnetic exposure isn't ideal. And get outside. Take a long walk in actual sunlight. Reconnect with nature a bit.
It all sounds like trying to undo some of the processing of modern life we talked about earlier.
That seems to be the underlying theme, yes. Getting back to a more natural state.
It's really quite incredible when you piece it all together, what these sources suggest about this tiny pea-sized gland. And we've only really scratched the surface here. The material hints at even wilder stuff, like DNA projection, things we didn't even get into.
And that leads to one final, really provocative claim from the sources we reviewed. They posit that there might be certain groups, madmen is the term used, who actually want our third eyes calcified and closed.
Seriously, why would anyone want that?
The theory presented is that an active open pineal gland makes people less controllable, less docile. So these groups might even actively try to discredit scientific findings that support the pineal gland's importance, to basically keep this knowledge suppressed, keep people unaware of their own inherent potential.
Wow. That's quite a thought to end on. It definitely raises a huge question. If so much potential, so much of our well-being could be tied to this one tiny gland, what other deep connections might exist? Between our bodies, our environment, how we see reality, connections that are maybe overlooked just waiting for us to, rediscover them.
It really is an invitation, isn't it? To explore further, maybe take some of these ideas and see what resonates, to empower yourself with this knowledge. Your own deep dive is just beginning.